Just like the evening before, the food she made was different from the one her husband was used to. The aroma was unfamiliar, and the spices didn't blend the way they should. Then he asked again, "What's wrong with the meal this morning again?" But this time Nia couldn't find the perfect lie to tell. She had to admit and tell the truth. "I never learned to cook or do housework," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She stared at her hands, once adorned with delicate henna designs, now trembling with nervousness. These words were hard for her to say. They reminded her of all the years she missed learning these important things. Once upon a time, in a small African village, hugged by green hills and rivers, lived a girl named Nia. The air in the village always smelled of fresh earth after the morning rain, and the laughter of children echoed through the dusty paths. Nia was not just any girl. She was like the morning sun, bright and beautiful. Everybody in the village knew her. When she walked through the marketplace, even the birds seemed to sing a bit sweeter. The market was always bustling with traders, selling colorful fabrics, dried fish, and ripe mangoes. The scent of roasted peanuts and spicy stew filled the air. Nia had a sister, Lainey. Naya was also a beauty, but she was like the moon to Naya's sun, nice but not as bright. People saw Lani, but it was Nia they remembered. You see, in this village, Naya was like a rare gem that everyone admired, but not everything was as perfect as it seemed. The women in the village had a worry: their husbands. They held their husbands' hands a bit tighter and drew them closer when Nia passed by. Her beauty was a bit too much, they thought, a bit too shiny. So they whispered and watched, careful to keep their home safe from the shine of Naya. Nia and Lani's parents loved both their daughters. Yes, but Nia was their star, their favorite child. They treated her like she was made of gold. Nia didn't have to fetch water or go to the farm. All she did was sit pretty, making beads and smiling like the morning sun. The beads she made were intricate, woven with tiny, delicate shells and vibrant colors that shimmered in the sunlight. Lani, on the other hand, did all the hard work. She fetched the water, helped on the farm, and did so much more. This favoritism started to dig a hole between the sisters. Lani, with each passing day, felt a bit more shadow than moon. And Nia, well, she was stuck in her golden cage, shining, but not really living. In this village of tales and songs, the story of Naya and Lani was just beginning, a story of beauty, envy, and what it really means to shine. Let's turn the page and see where this path leads. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the village remained wrapped in its usual rhythms of life. The pounding of millet, the ringing of laughter from children chasing each other in the fields, and the distant drum beats at night filled the air. But in the heart of Lainey Nia's sister, something was changing. A small seed of jealousy, watered by the days, was growing. You see, it wasn't just the villagers who noticed Naya. Men from other kingdoms, men with heavy pockets and high titles, started coming. They brought gifts, fine clothes, shiny beads, and even gold, all for Nia, they said, for the village jewel. They smiled at her, their eyes shining like the gifts they brought. As for Lainey, she stood in the background, hands filled with chores, heart filled with a growing shadow. The parents, bless their hearts, didn't help much. They were busy polishing their jewel. "Nia, don't go to the river," they'd say. "Your skin will get too dark. Don't help in the kitchen. Your hands will get rough." All the while, Lainey's hands were getting rougher, her skin darker from the sun. She would return from the farm with dust clinging to her feet and sweat glistening on her brow while Nia remained untouched by labor. Naya saw this. She saw the weight on Lainey's shoulders. Sometimes she tried to help. She sneaked into the kitchen or tried to grab a water pot, but their mother was always there, quick as a cat. No, Nia, you'll ruin your beauty. Let Lainey do it. Nia would look at Lani's eyes full of sorrow, but she dared not say or do anything. Lani felt alone, alone in the middle of all the noise. It was like she was a shadow, unseen, always behind. People in the village, they'd ask her, "How's Naya?" As beautiful as ever. But nobody ever asked about Lani. As days rolled by, Lainey's heart grew heavy, with questions about her place in the family, her worth in her parents' eyes. She decided to confront them. One evening, as the sun kissed the horizon in a golden embrace, she asked them, "Why do you treat us so differently? Why is everything about Naya?" Their parents, taken aback, tried to explain. "Nia is special, a gift to our family. Her beauty can bring us fortune. It's not that we love you less, but Nia's beauty is a rare thing." But these words, they didn't soothe Lainey's aching heart. They sounded hollow, unfair. She felt a sting, a deep ache that wasn't easy to heal. Her parents' words echoed in her mind, but they didn't reach her heart. Dissatisfaction brewed inside her, a storm that wasn't ready to come. The days in the village rolled on, and Naya, the village jewel, found a husband, not just any man, but the son of the wealthiest man in the village. This match was like a fairy tale, the kind grandmothers told under the starlit sky. And after introducing him to her family, they started planning a wedding. The wedding was a grand affair. Drums echoed, feet danced, and voices sang in celebration. The whole village was dressed in colors bright as the sun. The air smelled of roasted meat and fresh palm wine. Naya looked like a queen adorned in beads and fabrics that shimmered like the river at sunrise. People from far and near came to witness this union. They said this wedding is like a dream. Look at how lucky Naya is. Meanwhile, Lainey's journey was different. Away from the limelight, she met a man. He wasn't wealthy like Naya's husband, but his heart was rich with kindness. He worked hard, his hands as honest as his smile. He saw Lani not just as Nia's sister, but as Lani the moon with her own gentle light. They fell in love, a love as deep and steady as the roots of the baobab tree. Their wedding was simpler, but the joy was just as full. The village celebrated, but the fanfare was softer, more like a gentle stream than a roaring river. Lani didn't mind. In her heart, she knew she had found true love. Not a fairy tale, but something real and warm. Her husband would often bring her wildflowers from the fields, their colors bright against the earthen pots in their small home. Both sisters, in their own way, started new chapters, Nia in her grand union, and Lani with her heart full of quiet happiness. The village watched their tales weaving into the tapestry of village life. Time passed quietly in the village, and in Naya's new house, a big secret was about to come out. Naya, always treated special, never learned to do housework. Her hands, which looked nice, didn't know how to cook or clean. The embroidered cloths on her table remained spotless, not because of her efforts, but because of the maid's diligent hands. At first, Naya kept this secret from her husband. She was smart and found ways to hide it. She would give money to the maid who did the cooking and cleaning, and then tell her husband, "I made this for you." she'd say, smiling. Her husband, not knowing the truth, would thank her, saying she was the best cook in the whole world, but secrets have a way of coming out. One day the maid got sick. There was nobody to cook. Nia, feeling nervous, tried to do it herself. She remembered the food her mother and Lainey made, but she couldn't cook like them. The aroma of roasted yams she once loved was nowhere to be found in her attempts. That night, her husband sat down to eat, expecting a good meal, but the food wasn't good. The soup was too watery and the vegetables were not cooked right. He looked confused. "What happened?" he asked. Naya lied, saying there weren't fresh vegetables in the house and the ingredients too. She used just the little available, and since the maid was sick, she couldn't send her to the market to get fresh vegetables and ingredients. She pleaded and convinced her husband that night. Then came the following morning. The maid was still sick, so Nia had to make the meal herself again. Just like the evening before, the food she made was different from the one her husband was used to. Then he asked again, "What's wrong with the meal this morning again?" But this time, Nia couldn't find the perfect lie to tell. She had to admit and tell the truth. "I never learned to cook or do housework," she said. These words were hard for her to say. They reminded her of all the years she missed learning these important things. The scent of burnt rice filled the air, a stark contrast to the delicious meals she had always been served. Her husband went from being confused to upset. "How do you not know these simple things?" he asked. He was shocked that his wife, known for her beauty, didn't know how to take care of her home. He made a quick decision. He packed up Naya's things and sent her back to her parents. "You were treated like a queen, but a queen, but a queen, but a queen should know about her home," he said. Nia went back to her parents' house. This house, once a happy place, now felt like a prison. The laughter that once filled the rooms was replaced with whispered regrets. She was more than just a pretty face. She was more than just a pretty face. She was a reminder that beauty isn't everything. Her parents looked sad and sorry. They knew they made a mistake in how they raised her. But this understanding came too late, like rain that comes after the crops have already gone bad. After everything that happened, people in the village quietly talked about Naya coming back home. In her parents' house, everyone felt sad, and there were many things they didn't talk about. Then a big secret that had been hidden for a long time came out. Lainey, who always watched everything quietly, saw that her parents and Nia were not getting along. One night, as the crickets sang their lullaby, Lainey's parents sat them down. The air was heavy with the weight of impending revelations. "Lani," they began, their voices barely above a whisper, "you were adopted." Naya was shocked. She had always felt a little different from the rest. Now she knew why. This was a big piece of her life story that she had just found out. The moonlight streaming through the window cast long shadows as the truth settled into her heart. Their parents looked sad and sorry. They said, "We thought Naya's beauty would make you less important. That's why we did things this way. But we were wrong." They were sorry for not speaking up about this before. Naya felt upset by this. She realized her whole life was like a pretty box with nothing inside. She told her parents how she felt. "You raised me to be seen, not to really live. You taught me how to be pretty, not how to be pretty, not how to handle life." She was honest about how much this hurt her. That night, everyone in the room felt really sad. They cried and talked about how they felt. They said sorry to each other and forgave each other and forgave each other. It was hard, like cleaning a cut, but they had to do it. Lainey and Naya, now knowing the whole truth, understood each other and their parents better. They knew their parents weren't perfect and had made mistakes. The sisters felt closer because they shared this hard time and knew understanding. The next morning they walked together to fetch water, a task Nia had never done before, yet she found a strange sense of peace in its simplicity. As time went on, the family started to change how they were together. They loved each other for who they were, not just for how they looked or where they came from. The village, ever watchful, saw the change. They saw Nia not just as a jewel, but as a woman growing into her strength. They saw Lainey no longer just a shadow, but a light in her own right. You see, this story, like many others, teaches us a lot. It shows us that beauty without skill is like a river without water. It tells us that loving someone more than others is not fair. It reminds us that life can surprise us with lessons we never expected to learn. In the end, Naya and Lainey, with their parents, walked the path of redemption, a path that taught them the true value of upbringing and the importance of being equipped for life, not just to look good. This story teaches us a valuable lesson. Beauty alone is not enough. Nia's journey shows that while admiration can make someone feel special, it does not prepare them for real, life responsibilities. True worth comes from knowledge, skills, and independence. A person must be more than just a pretty face, they must be equipped to handle life's challenges. Additionally, the story highlights the dangers of favoritism in families. Parents should nurture all their children equally, valuing their unique strengths rather than prioritizing appearance. Lainey, though overshadowed for years, found true happiness through her resilience and personal growth. This teaches us that self-worth is not defined by how others see us, but by our own efforts and character. In the end, both sisters learned that true fulfillment comes not from external admiration, but from inner strength and wisdom. Thank you for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more meaningful and inspiring content. Stay tuned for more exciting videos. Enough, you fool! We warn you. How dare you lay your hands on the king? You will pay dearly for this useless woman. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful woman named Leela. Leela was known for her beautiful smile and her kindness. Her nickname was Smiler, as the villagers fondly called her. She was a very cheerful person who always made sure that people around her were happy in her own little way. She had a little business where she weaved beautiful baskets and sold them in the Moa market. Her baskets were used for home decorations, jewelry organizers, and more. The Moa market, bustling with colorful stalls and the chatter of merchants, was the heart of the village, and Leela's stall stood out because of her intricate designs and welcoming demeanor. She was also popular for making beautiful baskets known in our entire village and the neighboring villages who came to do business in Moa. On the day of her marriage, all her customers came to celebrate with her. They were happy, and there was lots of food to eat. It was the wedding of the people, and it was so because of her nature of business that made her so popular, and also her beautiful smile. Therefore, they came to celebrate with her in their numbers. Her husband, Theo, was a businessman who always traveled for business. A very gentle and humble man, he was also a kind and passionate gentleman who always stood up for the truth. He was a good man, known for his calm demeanor and thoughtful words, which earned him respect among the villagers. However, a heavy sorrow weighed on her heart. She was barren, unable to bear children. She longed to hold her own children. She desired to be called mother, but they were not forthcoming. Gradually, the once very cheerful and kind Leela started changing. She became very aggressive. She would cry all day. She became a shadow of herself. Soon she stopped weaving. She was always at home, crying. People stopped patronizing her. Sales were not forthcoming any longer. That cheerful charm was no longer there, as she had completely changed. Her home, once filled with the lively aroma of woven reeds and cheerful laughter, became quiet and somber. So she stopped the weaving business and stayed at home crying. Her husband encouraged her to be patient, but she wouldn't, as she was so desperate to have a child. Soon she became the talk of the town, as it was already 5 years and there was no sign of pregnancy, nor even a miscarriage. She went to wherever was recommended by anyone. Sometimes she went to prayer houses where they would tell her to bring some money and they would fast and pray for her. Then she'd be pregnant. But after 1 year, still no sign of pregnancy. She was sometimes taken to witch doctors, where she was told to bring goats, cows, and all manner of items, yet nothing to show for it. Everyone gossiped about her in the village. It's been 8 years, and there was still no sign of pregnancy. She became even more frustrated. The people who were once her friends became her worst nightmare, as they regularly mocked her. They called her all manner of names. Some said she had given her kids to her spirit husband. Some said she was a witch and had donated her womb for rituals, and that's why she made so much money from her weaving business. All manner of awful things were said about her. She kept crying day and night, but her husband kept consoling her. I understand what you're going through, but be patient with God. He will give us children. I'm not complaining, so forget about whoever is talking to you. Forget about whoever is insulting you. Am I not your husband? Are you not the one who is being mocked? You're not the one that has been called names? You go about your business activities without anyone calling you barren. But me, wherever I turn, there is someone waiting to remind me that I am responsible for my childlessness, or that I am a barren woman. Am I not more than children to you? It doesn't matter if you bear children for me or not. I still love you, and that's all that matters. I believe in His own time God will give us children, not just a child. So cheer up. Your mother will come and call me names. Your siblings, especially your sisters, will call me a witch and a barren woman who only knows how to eat their brother's money. Please, just let me be, she said. She kept crying. She was so frustrated and desperately in need of a child. She lost focus. She stopped believing. She lost her faith in God. She just wanted any means at all, as long as it was going to work for her. But her husband kept telling her that God's time is the best and she should be patient. She said, if God wanted me to have a child, He had 8 years to prove it. I'm done hoping and believing. Somehow, I will help myself. One day, Leela's neighbor, Mira, told her of a prophet who sees visions. She said, he's a very powerful man and he can help you. He has helped a lot of women and I know he will help you. Mira assured her that this was going to be the last place she would go to, so she agreed. Leela could not sleep all through that night. She was thinking about what Mira had told her. She was excited and afraid at the same time. But she had made up her mind to go with Mira or any other person as long as it was going to yield fruit. Pondering and wondering what Kofi, the man Mira told her about, would look like, and if it would work just like Mira had said or not, she had so many thoughts on her mind. She didn't tell her husband what she had discussed with Mira because she knew he would never approve of her going with Mira. He was never in support of those places she went to, but she went there anyway without his consent. One fateful Saturday morning, as early as 600 a.m., Leela and Mira were at Kofi's house. The house, shrouded in mystery with its tall bamboo fence and dimly lit interior, seemed otherworldly. He told her what she came for. She was surprised. "Don't worry, this week you'll be pregnant. I assure you. I have helped several women like you, and yours won't be different. Don't be afraid, your weeping days are over. You will carry your own child in your hands 9 months from now." Mira and Leela looked at each other and smiled. Mira was happy for her, and Leela had the feeling that this was the very last place she would visit for a child. She knew in her heart that this was the last one, and that she was going to have a child after this one. But you need to be aware of what it entails, your do's and don'ts. Whatever it takes, I'm ready. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm fed up with this mockery, the shame, the reproach, and all the names people call me, she said. Okay then, every December you will sacrifice a goat, a dove, 5 tubers of yam, 5 bottles of Fanta, palm oil, 10 cowries, and a packet of biscuits. Is that all for a whole year? This is very little. I can afford it on a weekly basis. Quiet, he said. You must be ready to pay the ultimate sacrifice. Are you ready? Yes, she fearfully agreed. Now listen, he said. You will have a son, but you must never lay your hands on him or scold him, no matter what. He is a king and must be treated like a king. Whatever he does, just let him be. Whoever touches him is dead. I said he is a king. She was confused and wondered what kind of king he was talking about. Lost in thought, Kofi shouted, "Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand." "You better do, because your life and everyone around you depends on it." "Oh, okay." She was a bit scared, but she was determined to do whatever it takes to have a child. So she was willing to risk it, despite being told of the dangers that lied ahead. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs as Kofi took her to the river, told her to remove her clothes, and he made several incantations and sacrifices. He tied a goat and other items they brought for the sacrifice. Everything was said and done under the eerie glow of a crescent moon. They went back home. That same week, Leela became pregnant. She was very happy. She started being cheerful again. Her husband was surprised at her sudden change. She kept glowing as her beauty shone like a beacon. She told her husband she was pregnant. He was so happy, and he brought so many gifts for her. Soon, the news of her pregnancy went around the entire village. Some came to her house to see for themselves. Others came to mock her. But they got there and saw a beautiful woman glowing with the beauty of her early pregnancy days. She started weaving again with a renewed sense of purpose. Those who ran away from her came back to her. She had more customers now than ever. Sales were multiplying, business was booming, and everything seemed perfectly all right. 9 months later, she gave birth to a cute little prince. No one knows the source of the baby except Mira, who took her to Kofi, and herself. It was a secret between the two of them alone. People came with gifts to welcome the newborn baby. He was a very cute little prince. His parents named him Zid, meaning, I have a child now. Everyone who saw him loved him. Little did they know that trouble had just been born. He would cry all night, keeping his parents awake. As soon as the day dawned, he would sleep. He kept doing this for the first 7 months after his birth. Then he stopped. Leela thought everything was over. Little did she know that it had just gotten started. After 5 years, Zid would say strange things, and you'd be wondering where he heard them from or who taught him. Sometimes he would call older people names, but the mom kept pleading with them, saying he was just a child and must have heard someone saying it. One day, a neighbor flogged him on the buttocks because he insulted her. That same night she slept and didn't wake up. Nobody could tell what killed her, but Mira and Leela knew what had happened. Zid called Leela by her name. When the husband complained, she said, he's just a child. One night, Theo woke his wife up in the middle of the night and told her, I don't like the way you're bringing up this boy. You're spoiling him. I know you had a tough time. I know you went through difficult times before he came, but please, so he doesn't become a burden to us tomorrow, let's train this child up in the fear of God. Okay, I have heard you, sir. Can I go back to bed now? She asked. That same night, Theo had a vision where a strange woman appeared to him and gave him a warning regarding Zid. Zid might be your son, but he is a king. He is our king. He is not a child. Be careful how you talk to him. You must never lay your hands on him, or harm him, You will be risking your life if you don't listen to me. Be warned. Don't say I didn't warn you. He woke up, and he was so afraid. He told his wife about this strange encounter he had. She acted surprised, even though she knew exactly what he had encountered. He could not even look at Zid anymore, let alone touch him. He was wondering what kind of king he was and what that statement meant. He was really disturbed. About 5 people had died in the community because they scolded him. One woman and her son died because Zid took the son's bowl, and the mother went and took it back from him and scolded him. That night, they both slept and didn't wake up. Everyone became afraid of him. He was a very mysterious and mischievous child who caused trouble wherever he went. Everybody in the village warned their kids not to go anywhere near Leela or her son. Theo was a very busy man who wasn't always around. He went on one business trip or another, here and there. After that encounter he had with the strange woman in his vision, he became so afraid that he would travel out for business and remain there for months. He was afraid of the boy. He began to suspect the deaths they all happened at the time when they had issues with him, and surprisingly, they all died in the same manner. So he kept pondering and thinking. He kept connecting the relationship between the deaths and Zid. He was convinced that something was wrong with Zid, something ungodly, and he believed that his wife knew about it. That's why she never laid her hands on him or scolded him. So he remained at his business place while he sent a monthly feeding allowance for them, but he made sure he spoke with his wife every day to know how they were faring. Leela was becoming tired of Zid's behavior, but there was nothing she could do to change it. She was warned not to take him anywhere, including church, so she kept thinking. She regretted her actions and wanted to be patient, but it was too late. There was nothing she could do any longer, so she had to face the trouble she brought upon herself. The joy of motherhood became sorrow for her. Whenever Zid saw her crying, he would laugh at her, and she would cry even more. One day Theo sent money to Leela. He told her he was coming back that weekend with some business partners. He needed her to prepare something nice for them, since they would be having a meeting in their house, and the visitors would spend the night with them. They had spoken on Thursday night. She was so happy that her husband was coming home after 5 months, but Zid wasn't happy that his dad was coming. He hated him. Leela rushed to the market on Friday morning to get everything she needed to prepare the food for her husband and his business partners, since they were already on the 9th bus and were going to arrive at the house very early on the 9th bus very early on Saturday morning. She came back, prepared the meal, and cleaned up the house. After Zid had eaten, she told him to take care of the house because she wanted to rush down to the evening market to sell some of her baskets. The evening sky was streaked with the warm hues of twilight as she gathered her baskets and set out. By the time she returned, Zid had poured the pot of food she had prepared onto the floor. The aroma of the spilled food lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of the day's toil. She was so angry. "Do you know how much this food cost? Do you know how long it took me to prepare this food? Your father is already on his way and will be here with his business partners first thing tomorrow morning. How do you expect me to prepare another food for them this night? I will not spare you this time. Enough of all this rubbish." Her face was flushed with a mix of fury and despair. She could no longer tolerate his evil act. She laid him on the floor and flogged him so hard on his buttocks for the first time ever. He cried and screamed. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, rushed to her house upon hearing the noise. They were all surprised that she could beat him. Nobody stopped her. They said, "Go ahead and beat him. He needs it." The flickering light from kerosene lamps illuminated the shocked yet resolute expressions of the onlookers. So she beat him to her satisfaction. That same night, his people came. "We warned you. How dare you?" they said, their voices filled with a menacing calm. "For this useless boy," she responded, her voice shaking but defiant. "I knew this day would come, but I never knew it would be this sudden. At least I'll be free from this horror movie you called a child. I am ready to die. Do your worst. Enough is enough is enough. I'm happy I flogged him so hard to my satisfaction for once, and he cried. He screamed. He cried so hard. The air in the room turned icy, as if the very presence of his people drained all warmth. He was asked what he wanted them to do with her. He requested her life, so she was killed on her bed. He also went back with his people. He laid close to her and died there too, while his spirit went back with his people. By the time the husband arrived that morning, he found his wife and son lying dead. He wept bitterly. The morning sun cast long shadows across the room, highlighting the still forms of his family. "I must know what happened to my wife and son. I won't bury them until I know what killed them." One of his partners said to him, "I know where you can find answers." So he took him to his pastor, who told him everything. "Your son is from the marine kingdom. He is not a child. He's a ting. He wanted to experience the human world, so he came through your wife because she made herself available through her impatience. Your son has a wife and kids over there. That's why you and your wife were warned never to touch him." The pastor's voice was low and somber as he recounted the tale. He told him how the wife got the son, the agreements they made with Kofi, the yearly sacrifices, everything. However, she was tired of his behavior and could no longer tolerate him. She was fed up with his evil acts, so she laid her hands on him, which was against the oath they took. That's why they killed her. And he also returned with them to where he came from. He said, I know you loved your wife, but the people outside were not kind enough with words. She got so frustrated and did what she felt was best, and the only option she had, since she didn't have the patience to wait for God's time any longer. The husband wept bitterly. I warned her about her desperation to have a child, but she wouldn't listen. The weight of his sorrow pressed down on him like a heavy shroud. He went home and buried his wife and son. She was a lesson to a lot of women who were called barren, not to be in a hurry, no matter how long they waited. He mourned her for 3 years before getting married again. 1 year into his new marriage, his wife gave birth to triplets, 2 boys and a girl. The cries of newborns filled the house with hope and joy, a stark contrast to the silence that had once consumed it. They lived happily ever after. This story teaches a valuable lesson about the dangers of desperation and impatience. It reminds everyone to trust in God's timing and not seek solutions through questionable means or shortcuts, as such actions often lead to regret and irreversible consequences. Leela's desperation to have a child led her to make a pact that ultimately brought sorrow and tragedy upon her family. The story underscores the importance of faith, patience, and finding strength in adversity. It also serves as a warning against succumbing to societal pressure or ridicule, as these can cloud judgment and lead to harmful decisions. In the end, Leela's story became a lesson for other women in the community, encouraging them to wait on God and avoid rushing into decisions driven by despair. Thank you for watching my channel, and I invite you to stay tuned for more interesting and inspiring videos. Every night before Lena goes to bed, Brother Peter always visited Lena's room. No one knew what he always went in there to do, but he spent at least 1 hour in Lena's room before coming out every night. He always carried a small prayer book with him, which made some of the other parishioners wonder even more. Good for nothing child, you are a disgrace to your family. Even if you want to get pregnant, why not find someone else? Must it be a monk? In the peaceful town of Omaha lived a sweet girl named Lena. She was kind and respectful and always had a big smile on her face. Lena was the maid at the local Catholic church where she helped the monks and nuns with their chores. She worked closely with Brother Peter, a gentle and kind monk who had been a father figure to her since she was a little girl. Brother Peter was loved by everyone in the community. He was known for his good heart, his deep faith, and his dedication to God. Lena loved working at the sick parish house. She felt safe there, and the serene atmosphere of the parish brought her peace. As a matter of fact, Lena wanted to become a reverend sister one day, and Brother Peter always treated her with love. He would often buy her little gifts when he traveled with the other monks, like bracelets, bread, or sweets. He sometimes also brought her small wooden crosses, which Lena treasured dearly. Every night, before Lena went to bed, Brother Peter always visited Lena's room. No one knew what he always went in there to do, but he spent at least 1 hour in Lena's room before coming out every night. This brought out curiosity among the other parishioners. They started wondering what was happening. Why is Brother Peter always visiting Lena's room every night? They gossiped and whispered among themselves. Two other young girls who also worked at the parish house were also curious to know what was happening. They said to themselves, I wonder why Brother Peter